But USA loses to Germany. Do you care at all? Does that set you back at all if you're an American that they lose their second straight World Cup here? And I didn't see this team winning it. I like
Yeah.
the roster they had here. Bridges on it, Edwards on it. There's some intriguing young guys. These guys are sort of up next after the next wave of young stars that are taking over now. But they couldn't rebound. They couldn't defend all that well. And the usual issue of trying to get on the same page offensively played out as well. I think it was a mistake having Halliburton on the bench. Brunson was good, but didn't connect things enough here. And Jaren Jackson was really bad.
Yeah, they need size. And it's the biggest. It's such a different game in FIBA. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched a ton of it. I'm on Mountain Time, so
and they'll go up against Jokic next summer probably.
Yeah. So I that was actually a shame that Jokic and Murray didn't play because obviously those two teams played each other today. So yeah, a big thing. I mean, did I lose a ton of sleep over it? No, not
no,
really.
You were sleeping.
I was sleeping. I was chilling. But yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is just bringing in size and adjusting to the different rules. If you're going to throw a roster together, you definitely want to have the top end talent because that'll carry you. They maybe didn't have what they've had in years past. So, but overall, I mean, it's cool. I enjoyed the highlights. I enjoyed watching, but I haven't been living or dying by people like that.
The one thing I think mattered most with this team is how it vaults Anthony Edwards into this next season. And of course, the comeback against Germany and the scrimmage between these two teams got everybody going across the league as they woke up and saw the highlights and all the rest and said, oh, Is this guy about to make the leap? I have a list of about 10 players going in this year that intrigue me most, that I think are most worth watching in terms of how important they're going to become in the league. And he's probably right up at number one. Like, is this going to be a guy who's all NBA, right up there with any other star who makes his team relevant, no matter who's around him, that kind of guy? Or is he, one of these decent stars who score a ton and matter, but don't really move the needle in terms of winning? That's where he's at right now. And he's still so young. He has time to grow. He's on a pretty erratic roster that's not in a good place right now overall. But he's still good enough where, as we said earlier in the show, they're kind of pushing the Nuggets a little bit round one, making it tough on them. And he's out there leading a comeback against them and almost forcing the series to go way longer than it should have for Denver. I don't know which way to point with him because I know he has all the talent and athleticism in the world, but is he in a good enough situation? And does he have some of those tools of making teammates better and those other things that make you a Jokic?
Yeah, it's a swing skill for sure, is the playmaking. I think you look at somebody like Donovan Mitchell, that's been the years where he's played really well in the postseason has been when the playmaking has looked really good.
Yeah, Mitchell's a good comparison.
He just like his trajectory reminds me a ton of early Mitchell, where Mitchell shows up and is like immediately good for the Jazz. I'm trying to remember what year that was, but he was like exceptional in his first playoffs.
Must have been 17, 18, I'd have to say.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm forgetting who they're playing, but he just like popped right away. Edwards, I mean, like nobody tested the Nuggets like that the way he did. And it was the series, like if they made the adjustment a little bit sooner, when they just started running straight pick and roll for Edwards, Denver, and look, they really improved their perimeter defense. They didn't have anybody with the quickness nor size that could keep up with Edwards, who's such a fast and overpowering athlete. I mean, again, if they'd made that adjustment sooner, I don't know what that series would have looked like. By the time they really leaned into it was like game 4, basically, when Denver has a 3-0 lead. But yeah, they just had no answers for him. And really, I mean, it was him or Booker turning into Jordan for 3 games. Those were the two guys that tested Denver the most in last year's postseason. And I mean, look, Minnesota's roster's in flux, but they were missing guys. They were missing McDaniels, Naz Reid. So that team is one of the teams I'm looking at in the West is like, as a team that could test Denver next year. Phoenix obviously comes to mind. Lakers like their offseason as well. Will need to stay healthy, but Minnesota is really interesting, and they were not a great matchup for Denver. And that's without mentioning, like, Gobert is probably the best Jokic defender in the league, even at this point. I know Jokic has, had his way against Gobert and the Jazz in the past, but he did a pretty good job in that series. I think Jokic's percentage from the field was by far his lowest was against Minnesota. So
and that's probably the
really
way to do it.
Matchup.
Two bigs and McDaniels. That's a lot of size and versatility on the front line. Maybe they find some ways to pad the depth on the back end, because that's another difference between those teams. And there's some other issues like Rudy's overall play and Towns fouling that I think are probably going to keep holding that team back.
Yeah.
But they're interesting enough. And Conley was a nice addition last year to shake things up from Russell, who they probably didn't want to keep. But I'm excited to watch the West. Nuggets, I still see them as the prohibitive favorites next year. Celtics got to get out of the East, and then we'll see from there. And